All right, we're ready to get started now. Just gonna screen share from my own laptop because the upload thing is now working. So, okay. Welcome to the Users Committee meeting. We have some Users Committee members in the room, some are online. We're going to go through the reminder slides, then we'll do a roundtable of introductions. Then we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about because we need to prioritize a little bit discussion topics that the UC wants to focus on. We're going to hear from RSP team. They've prepared a presentation for you in response to the 23A report. And then we'll just sort of take it from there. So usual users committee type of thing. It's a reminder that we have a code of conduct. You can find it in the PCW website. Okay, back in business. Right, reminder that we have a code of conduct. There are people you can contact if you witness or experience violations of the code of conduct. Reminder to check name tags, wear a mask if you want to, keep an eye out for those social battery pins, and if you feel unsafe at any time, send an email to this email address. For our virtual participants, please remain muted if you're not speaking. So first, a brief introduction to the Users Committee. So if you are from the science community and you're here, the Rubin Users Committee is charged with soliciting feedback from the science community. That's what we call like LSST users, thus Users Committee. And they are charged with doing this about the LSST data products and the Rubin Science platform specifically. They recommend improvements in their twice yearly reports that are delivered to the Rubin Operations Director. You can find more about the UC in their charge on the website. You can find their reports in the Rubin Community Forum using the tag Users Committee. They have 2 formal meetings per year, the 23A and 23B meetings. Each one is associated with one of their twice yearly reports. The meeting that they have at the PCW is neither of those. It's just sort of an in-between meeting where the UC can get together and talk about stuff and ask questions of Rubin staff. If you are in the science community and you have thoughts or ideas or issues with the data products or the RSP, you can email the Rubin Users Committee and say, hey, this has been an issue for me or my science. I think that the Users Committee should think about this, discuss this in their meeting, and perhaps address it in one of their reports. So you can contact, anyone can contact the Rubin Users Committee using the email list that's here. So we have 12 people on the Users Committee, and I think we'll just do a brief roundtable of introductions. So I'll kind of read through the Users Committee list. Each of you can introduce yourself, where you're from, and that's probably about it. Maybe your science background. And those of you who are online, you should be able to unmute when I call your name and introduce yourself also. Yeah. Okay, starting with Igor.
Hi, everyone. I'm Igor Andreoni. I am a Gerards Fellow at NASA Goddard and University of Maryland. I'm interested in particular in transient sources, and I'm co-chair of the TVS collaboration as of the beginning of this year.
Okay, I don't think we have Kingling with us today. Just looking at the... in the room or on Zoom. Okay, Ashley Villar.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Ashley Villar. I'm junior faculty at Harvard. I work on time domain astrophysics, and I'm co-chair of the ISSC.
Dom.
I am Dominique Bottigny from IN2P3 in France, and I am in the Dark Energy Science collaboration.
Marcus. Here today. Anya. Also not here. Alejandra's here though. Francisco?
Hi, I'm Javier Sanchez. I'm an associate scientist at Space Telescope, and I'm part of the Dark Energy Science Collaboration.
Matt is here.
Hi, I'm Matt Wiesner. I'm at Benedictine University near Chicago, and I'm most active in the desk.
Matthew Holman is the chair of the UC and he couldn't join us today. Alessandra, I think is not here.
No, I'm here on I'm online.
Oh, Matt, you are here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Matt Holman. I'm at the Center for Astrophysics. I work primarily on solar system projects at the for the time being. As Melissa said, I'm the current chair of the user committee.
Right. And Michael.
I'm Michael Woodvasey, faculty at the University of Pittsburgh and chair of the board of the LSST Discovery Alliance.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned before, those twice annual reports are available in the Rubin Community Forum. You should look in the science category and use the tag users committee, and you can find them for the 23A report. We want to thank the users committee for their 23A report. Rubin staff have reviewed it. And this is preparing a response, but we actually finished it earlier this week. So that is up and posted in the forum as well. And we're going to go through some of the items from the report today as well, which is the next thing to discuss. So based on the 23A report, we thought it would be good to have Gregory and Frosty present a little bit on the expected RSP developments over the coming year. So they are here, they've made some slides, they're going to talk for about 30 minutes and you'll be able to ask them questions about RSP developments. So that part of the agenda is pretty much for sure. And then we have a couple of other options for what we would like to talk about. We could talk about emphasizing the link between portal and notebook aspects, supporting user installed software, the role of the users committee through commissioning, which is something that your chair, Matt Holman, thinks is a priority for discussion today. And we could also talk about VMV and characterization reports, although a response for that item has already been posted. So right now I want to hear first from the users committee if there's a particular topic you want to discuss here that's not on the list, or if you particularly want to prioritize one of these starred items on the list. Just go ahead and talk, unmute and talk in the room. Don't need to raise hands. There's not that many of you.
I think I would be interested, especially in the role of the UC through commissioning. That's particularly interesting.
Okay. And that was the
Can
yes.
you repeat the comments because that wasn't audible?
I was saying I would be interested in hearing about the role of the UC through commissioning.
Could you hear that time, Gregory?
Yes.
Melissa, this is Igor. I have a question. What's intended to be the user install software in this case?
This is coming from the 23A report. There was an item about that. It's literally any packages that scientists might need to do their science analysis, and making sure it's easy to install those in the Rubin Science platform is the basics. Yeah. I think I can, it's in the slides as well, I think. That's, sorry to flip through slides so fast. That's not helpful. Anything the users committee wanted to discuss today that's not currently showing on this potential agenda? Alejandra, yeah. That makes sense. That might fit in well with the UC's role during commissioning as well. So it's like, yeah, it's a good addition there. Yeah. Do we have anyone from the science community who is here, who's had a problem and wants to raise something for discussion within the users committee? Sure. Yeah. Just, yeah, come to a mic. Yeah.
This is Michael Strauss. I'm coming here with my hat on as chair of the Science Advisory Committee. This is something that Melissa and I have talked about, but I'd be interested to understand the role of the Users Committee as the LSST website gets further developed for as we go into commissioning and operations. It's perhaps a little off topic, but it may be a topic for us to be discussed.
Website is a tool pretty much to use. So I think it falls under the purview of the UC. Okay, would anyone like to raise anything else before I kind of turn it over to Frosty and Gregory for the first component? Okay. Sounds good. Let's Frosty, it's here. Frosty, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. Yeah. So I have the mic for you. Yeah, this isn't gonna work because I have to just I had so many troubles. So I'll just advance for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Frosty. I'm the lead for bright light. I'm the lead for Rubin Data Services in operations, and one of the things that we do is provide the Rubin Science Platform. I'm here to talk to you, prompted by Melissa about this comment that was made in the report. Can I say that I actually had a little bit of difficulty unpacking this comment, and so just to iterate that Gregory, who's my product owner, who's online, and I would actually be delighted to be a standing item in your meetings and come and give you updates of developments and future plans. And then if you have questions, at least we'll have more context in the about how, the context in which the questions were asked. So I'm going to do a little bit of unpacking here, and also because this is an open session, I will be telling you some things that you committee members almost certainly already know, but just for the audience. Okay, next slide. So one of the things in the comment was whether there would be a freeze of the RSP between DP 0.2/DP 0.3, and again, not knowing the context in which that comment arose, I just want to clarify that DP 0.3 from the RSP was not DP 0.2. So new with DP 0.3 as of early this summer technically, and now officially announced, is a dual backend architecture, since the DP 0.2 data is on QServe, and the DP 0.3 data, which is an additional data set, is not an extension, it's a separate data set, is in Postgres. And so now we have both a Postgres-based tab service and a QServe-based tab service in the RSP. Currently, these tab services are addressed separately. Those who were in Mario's demo yesterday will see that he had to say get tab service SSO service. If you wanted to talk to DP 0.2, it's like get tab service. Actually, it's the default. And I know Gregory, as the product owner, would prefer it if we had a single endpoint that actually was clever enough to dispatch the query to the appropriate backend. That's actually quite a lot of work. So, any user committee input as to how the level of importance they would attach to that item would be useful to myself and Gregory as we're prioritizing work. DP 0.3 was also the first instance of the hybrid service. Now, for those who don't know in the audience, Rubin has adopted a hybrid data infrastructure where the public RSP services run in the cloud on a Google Compute cluster. data.lsst.cloud is actually in the cloud. But the data stores are actually on premises at Slack in the USDF. And therefore, with DP 0.3, when you do a tap query, a tap query connects to a Postgres at Slack. And then you don't see that. It just returns to you, but that's what's actually happening. A bit of extra fun, quote unquote, was that the Slack site had to shut down for electrical work for a week. This was at the time where Melissa was hosting a DP 0.3 workshop at UW. So that would have really messed up their plans. And so what we did was, and you know, actually Fritz and Colin did all the extremely tedious work to do this, is we actually stood up a DP 0.3 copy of the database in cloud and seamlessly switched over to the cloud version, and nobody noticed. And eventually when things got back, did we remember to switch back? Yes, I think we did. Okay. But you know, this actually just shows you how resilient and well interfaced the backend systems are. So we were able to respond to challenges like that. As it happens, in June, the summit also shut down for a week for electrical work. So I would like places to stop shutting down for electrical work, please, now, if at all possible. Okay, next slide. We kind of, you know, we've been in this like dual construction ops period for very long, and it's starting to be exhausting because the first thing that happened is all the meetings doubled. So DM is actually now reconfiguring itself to its ops configuration, just so that we don't actually have to maintain two structures at the same time. So what this looks like is RubinDM has 5 major areas of activity divisions, each with their own lead. That includes data services. Data services actually is also internal data services, not just the RSP. And we have 3 of the construction teams moving over to it, which is QServe, that's a high performance database, Firefly that does the RSP portal at IBAC, and then Square that does literally everything else. And there aren't many of us. So there's actually 10 developers, that includes actually 9 developers. We are adding a person in operations because of the RSP kind of evolving requirements. My baby intern. But there aren't a bunch of us, and there are 10,000 users. So a lot of the decisions that we take have to do with protecting our ability to service the users effectively. All right, next slide. So I just wanted to give a little bit of insight of how we decide what to work on at this point, because I think that might explain, you know, the perception that was created that anything is being frozen or being developed on. So the kind of sources of work items are still at this point Rubin construction requirements. That won't be the case forever, but like, you know, there are still you know, project level agency visible requirements that are on the books that we're still working on. An example of this would be user catalogs on QServe. We work in response to internal project needs, whether it's non-RSP services like the engineering telemetry database, or RSP services that are internal for internal project use. This is the thing that actually over the next couple of years is probably going to be the kind of most valued child because of commissioning. Fundamentally, the whole project is going into overdrive. So internal requirements actually get quite a high priority. We obviously respond to external user needs, either things that we see ourselves that the users are struggling with, input from the user committee, input from the CST, either for things that they're running into, trying to build their materials, or from their interactions with their users. And those are the kind of the most visible things to you of all these activities. We are doing a lot of development to support our ability to offer the service. You know, for example, an example of this is throttling, right? If you're going to put up a service for 10,000 users, you have to make sure that your services don't keel over if they get too highly used. this is completely invisible, and hopefully nobody ever realizes it's there. But nevertheless, it's a very important part of giving robust services to the community. There is some work is triggered by the readiness of systems that we rely on, or for systems that are waiting for us in order to complete their readiness. So, for example, the moment client server butler becomes available, we're going to drop everything and like switch to it, because it unleashes a lot of it blocks a lot of downstream requirements. There are sometimes emerging directorate priorities. And those who were witnessing that show yesterday, the relationship with the IDEX is one of those. This was not work that was initially in our books. Now we're doing work to support IDEC integration with Rubin, and that is a directorate priority. And we obviously don't want to say no. And there is a level, of course, of confluence with work underway. Like, it's not a purely priority-based list. If you're already in a piece of code doing a high priority item, we will often work on a lower priority item at the same time to increase developer productivity. So RSP developer has never been or will ever been frozen. Actually, the Patch Thursday banner that you see every Thursday is for real. We ship things every week, except maybe for yesterday when I said nobody touch anything because Mario is doing a live demo. But actually, Mario would have been able to do his live demo anyway, because the vast majority of upgrades that we do are actually done with no downtime. It is very rare for us to actually withdraw system access during those patches. So there is actually incredibly vigorous activity in this area. Pre-first photon, which is the phase that we're currently in, I just want to be honest and say that new user features are often not the top priority, unless it's an actual bug or like a user can't use the system. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't get done. What it means is, because they're not in the top priority bucket, we don't commit to timescales regarding the delivery of those features, because if something happens at the summit where the RSP is literally the only way to interact with the summit systems, if you're an observer, that takes priority, and so other things don't get done that week. But I'm also trying to pace the team. We've been working on this for now 10 years, and we still haven't gone through commissioning, and it's definitely a marathon. And hopefully not an ultra marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so when you commit to something externally, that creates a high level of pressure to be able to meet that commitment. So so this is why there isn't like, here's a list of user features for every month of the year between now and DP1. Nevertheless, DP1 is actually a key milestone. It's a key milestone in the project plan. So a lot of systems are rendezvousing at that point. There are services that don't make sense to have until DP1. For example, OpsLogTap, which is a service that advertises the position of the telescope, so that for follow-up telescopes, there is no reason to have this now. So, there's no point to have it before DP1. It's also a major scaling event, because it seems increasingly likely, I think, that DP1 is going to be open to data rights holders, right? Yeah. So that's the 10,000 users showing up on the door. So a lot of the work that we're prioritizing for DP1 is being able to not buckle under. I really think that when finally we have Rubin images from the camera on the sky, I think there's going to be a massive usage of the system, and we're really trying to prepare for that. Okay, next.
Actually, before you go on to the future things, I just want to add one thing to this. While these priorities are absolutely, as Frosty described, we still have managed to release quite a few kind of medium scale user facing features over the course of the time since DP0 first started. So, that it's possible that we have been more low key about that than would facilitate the user committee fully appreciating what we've done. So, I mean, that's something we could talk about.
Yeah, this is
Uh,
actually a fair point. Yeah, I mean,
communicating those things more explicitly on a, semi-annual basis or something like that. There are lots of new user-facing features that that weren't there 2 years ago.
And yeah, and so I would like to reiterate that we would be happy to come as a standing feature to your agendas and give you show and tell, maybe have the some time to do a demo and things like that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the users committee had a similar sort of request of the community science team, and we ended up creating a log of major updates for all our tutorials to help them easily keep track of when we had released new tutorials. Is there a log of major updates?
I mean, we have logs, but they're not like human reader. Sorry, they are human reader. They're not normal human.
Not boiled down to.
But we can
top
do
level
those.
bullets.
But also, if we came to the meetings, we could actually do demos, which actually makes a lot more. It's more understandable than to say, we did a thing that did a thing. So
yes.
But anyway, we're happy to take that on. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, now next slide. All right, nevertheless, we are working on things all the time. And so before DB1, here are some things that are user visible that you can expect. The first one is tap temporary upload queries to QServe. So this is a situation where you want to provide a list of things in your query, and you want results for each one of those things on that list. The example being that you have a number of objects and you want to do cron searches on every one of them in a single bulk operation. This is already supported in DB 0.3, so you're getting this like imminently. Well, it's already there. You're being told about this imminently. This is probably the single most large friction item that users have. I've been wanting to get around to it for years. Finally getting to it, which is network access to your RSP home space. And we are going to release a beta quality service of this before Christmas. So this is as the RSP becomes, it's a very useful environment, and particularly internally, people are using it in ways that we had not anticipated, like to actually carry out observing. And so a major point of user friction is people want to use their favorite editor to edit things, right? Now, the little terminal that you get in JupyterLab in your browser is a lie. It looks like a terminal and acts like a terminal, but it's not a terminal. And it's certainly not a windowed environment. So even if you're trying to use a terminal-based editor like Emacs, it gets like quite frustrating. And you can't use all the super nice IDs that people are using now, like VS Code, Atom, and all those kinds of things. So what the service will allow you to do is mount your RSP home space from your laptop. You can use all your favorite tools that you have installed on your laptop to edit files, to do whatever it is that you want. And when you save them, they will be available in your RSP environment. So you can code on your laptop and then run the code in your RSP environment. And hopefully that will decrease RSP was not meant to be a development environment, but it's being used as a development environment. So we might as well get on with that plan. So I think that's going to be fantastic. And it's going to deal with so many of the kind of user kind of niggles that they have. It also is very critical in reducing the load in the team. So when we're asked to install software, and I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, it's a little bit of a problem. We can't install all the software in the world. We're very uncomfortable supporting software that we don't actually have an ability to test. And there's a huge long tail. Like everybody wants AstroPi, but like the number of like little productivity things that people want is endless, right? And people want a specific tool, even though there's another tool that does exactly the same thing. For example, I can't remember which way around it is. We already had wget and somebody wanted curl. I mean, they both do the same thing, right? But if you're used to it, like it's a kind of annoying to do the other thing. So we're hoping that by exposing your home space to your own environment, you can use your long tail stuff without it being a support burden on us, and then you just the RSP then becomes an execution environment like it's meant to be for it. So that is going to be very, very big, and I'm very excited for it. The first time I actually was able to do this in alpha testing, I was like, oh my God, thank God. Okay, we're gonna go to Jupyter Lab 4.0 for notebooks. Yeah.
Before you move on, did you mention somewhere in there that users were using the RSP for observing? What kind of use is that? Like,
Not our, sorry.
oh,
No. I'm talking about on the summit.
yeah.
People have code, they're running cells in their notebooks that cause telescopes to move.
Ah, okay.
Right.
So it's staff use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see
Yeah.
it there. So it's not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I mean is, like, yeah, so this is, I wanted to mention this just to explain that, like initially my team did not have anything running in the dome. And now we're running stuff in the dome that's very high priority. And so, especially during the commissioning time, that does push more like data.lsst.cloud features lower down the list, because if Tiago needs something, Tiago gets something. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
A bunch of user interface, user experience improvements for the portal are in the work, as well as a number of new features, including UI support for joins between tables, which is also another thing that I think people will like a lot. This has been pushed down more times than I wanted, but we are really actually, honest to God, going to get to more portal notebook integration, which I also saw was on your list. In particularly, I really want to get to give you people query history and query transfer for the portal to the notebook. I think that will be super powerful in a very like core feature of the RSP that isn't that really makes the RSP special and not just like a notebook service on top of some data. And I'm not kicking myself because, like, yeah, Gregory is right. We do these things and we don't actually like brag about them. But actually, sometime in the last 3 months, you all got more memory on your pods. We bumped you up from 12 gigabytes to 60 gigabytes. And actually, I don't think we actually told anybody, but you have more memory. Okay, next one. I think this might be the last one, but I just wanted to show you an example of the kind of things that we're doing while we are working on the user visible features, just to give you more concrete examples of the kind of list of the source of work items that I mentioned before. For example, we just released Nublado version 3. It is essentially pretty much invisible to you. Like, it isn't like you went to the RSP one day, it didn't look any different really. But it has a lot of features that make your life easier. Login is faster. It fixes that horrible interaction where you try to close the pod and then it puts up a menu and then you can't go back to the home page and then the menu wants to be dismissed. That is all much better now. But that's not what we did. We were doing it. We actually needed a more effective way to spawn pods so that we can leverage it in future services. But, while we were in there, we fixed those things for you. We have a major revamp of secrets management underway that is entirely driven by the fact that other people want to deploy the science platforms, in particularly IDEX. And as you saw in the IDEX session, RSP was not intended to be a productized, anybody can download it and build your own data center scheme, but it is actually close enough to that people do want to use it that way. And so now we need to make their life easier. And so this is work that is done, again, to support, the directorate's priorities and our relationship with the IDEX. There's a major new RSP service for Summit operations that you're not going to see on data.lsst.cloud, but that's in pre-release testing, and it will help the Summit folks a lot and the operations department a lot. We desperately need better monitoring. I want to be able to tell you exactly how many users logged on how many times this month and what they did. I want to know that desperately because there's a huge prioritization field. If a lot of people are doing something and the something could be improved about it. It's a much bigger priority than it's a numbers game. It's a much bigger priority than if there's a feature that like only one person is using. So for us to be able to make those decisions and to bring those that data in front of you, we do need to spend some effort on service instrumentation. Because of oncoming GP1 full scale up terror, I do need to at least get some version of the quota and throttling system out. We already have a design, but we haven't actually gone to implement. We also need to get to quotas because so far we have been in friendly user, okay, like do whatever you want mode, which means that, you know, Mario has, I don't know how many terabytes on his home space in the RSP. And so at some point we actually have to start locking the system down for you know, untrusted users. We do at least need a plan towards implementing user catalogs. This is the major requirement that is still unserviced. And we will need integration with the client server butler when that becomes available. Okay, I think that was the last one. Was that the last one? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So just to reiterate, we're working full on a bunch of things. Some more user visible, some not. Clearly, we need to do a better job telling you about the user visible stuff. And please include us in your meetings, and we'll be very happy. We love doing demos. So, you know, we would be very happy to demo new functionality for you, even give you sneak previews and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's all I have, and I'm very happy to take questions. Oh, Gregory, did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, we can, if the committee wants to go through the points in their report and just ask us for, you know, more feedback on that, we can entertain that. But this is what we had presented. This is what we had prepared to present.
In the back.
Can you come up to us, Mike? So we only have one floating. Oh, yes.
How and when will users start learning about the quota throttling?
Okay. In plenty of good time. No, nobody's going to be in trouble for something they didn't know they did. So actually, one of the interesting things about, okay, all right. Caveat, we are actually cannot be certain that the way people have been using the science platform with simulated data reflects their eventual use of the science platform. I'm actually very concerned about that. Like, there is definitely signal that we got from data preview 0, but there are legitimate reasons to think that it is not entirely representative. For example, with simulated data, I don't think there's as much interest in the raw image products as there would be when we first started taking data. And actually, I think there's going to be a curve in the sense that my experience from previous archives is when you first start taking data, there is huge interest in reproducing the data reduction and also analyzing early products. And eventually you build trust in the data products that the facility is sending you. And then you go back to relying more on derivative data products such as catalogs. So with that caveat in mind, which actually applies to everything I say, one of the interesting things about releasing the system without quotas is we can actually now see the median use. So we have the ability to see whether the sizing that we picked is actually a reasonable size of birthright, as Gregory calls it, for example, disk space, and that's good. It's actually, the numbers are good on that one, except unless you're Mario. For the throttling, the throttling is going to be pretty much transparent to you under normal situations. The situations that we're going to get with throttling is, for example, somebody can technically use the VO services to download the entire data set, every image that we have. It is a thing that they can do. It's going to be very frustrating for them. It's going to be very annoying for us, and we'd rather stop that, right? So the throttling is going to come for like denial of service attack situations. Now, I will tell you that, and this is something that maybe you guys can discuss upon yourselves, we do have the capacity to do group-based throttling and quoting, right? So for example, I could theoretically make the RSP like go away unless you're a brittle Upton and then you get it all to yourself, right? Like, so an interesting thing would be, is there a tier of general users that maybe should be given priority access under situations of load, yeah, at the moment, I kind of just want to make sure I have knobs to turn. I don't think I'm going to need to turn those knobs before DB1. Yeah.
Maybe this is a good place to note that the resource allocation committee will probably be set up soon. It's one of the committees on your list. And so this quotas and throttling thing kind of has to go hand in hand with having that committee set up so that people can request more.
The allocation committee is not for the batch system? Oh, it's for everything. Okay. I thought it was just for the batch system.
Well, I think we want a resource allocation committee to think generally about resources and how they can help us
Will you
make.
give me more money for more space if there is?
I mean, I think I think resources will need to figure out, how far off we are from what people need, and we'll have to find a way to get them, right? There could be more resources from the in-kind program. There could be more resources that we buy. There will be some amount of resources that we set aside for batch and other uses.
I acknowledge, Michael, but let me just say one thing. Here's a classic kind of conundrum that you could also ponder and advise us on. So when you have this number of users, right, you have a ghost user problem, right? Somebody went to a summer school, signed up once, dumped a whole bunch of files in their space while trying the tutorials, and 3 years have passed and you haven't seen them again, right? So like a legitimate question to ask is, and actually I was asked this on Slack, and I actually gave the most negative possible answer because I don't want to mislead anybody. But a question to ask is, do you owe that user to pay Google to store their files forever, right? Now, this is the problem statement. Then comes the engineering approach where you go, what if we shuffle users' files to colder storage if we haven't seen them in 6 months? Now, when the user comes back 6 months later, they have to wait because while their files are retrieved from cold storage before they continue using them. You can also put a date that you guys could tell me. Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Does there come a time after which I don't know this user anyway, anything? We've sent a whole bunch of emails saying, hey, your account has been inactive, has been deactivated. So these are the kinds of questions that go to our ability to manage resources, because no matter how many resources we have, they're not infinite. So some level of control over them has to happen. I actually, in my intuition, and I could be wrong, is that the cold user problem is going to be big. I think there's going to be a lot of people who try the system for a while, and then they go do other things, or they were just curious or whatever. And I would rather reallocate those resources to the kind of user that comes back every week and is working on their thesis or working on their paper or supporting the commissioning team and so on. I'm sorry, Michael.
Thank you for that segue. To the degree that frozen was a bit triggering in the thing, it was the effectively frozen, not the RSP. It was the two factors of, to your point, usage from the DP0 falls off as people jump on it, right? It's fallen off to DP 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. We could then end up, so unfortunately, I take responsibility for writing some of this. It was the last sentence, not the first sentence, that's maybe most important. That sounds stupid when I say it that way. There's going to be a gap where users aren't really using DP0.
Correct.
So the effectively, and I realize how frozen is too strong. The effectively was, there's no feedback on what's happening. That's the concern.
Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, because you're right. Frozen was a bit triggering because it implied a willing action on our part. Okay, right. So now I wrote you 4 slides for no reasons, but okay. Let me explain this. You are absolutely correct. I mean, this is not a surprise. I anticipated this, that interest in simulated data would be relatively low. We know that astronomers have papers to write and, you know, faculty positions to apply for, and interest before actual data taking was never going to be enormous. And actually, you know, the community science team has done an amazing job engaging the people that they have. But right now we have, I don't know, 600 users signed up. I only see 40 users a week on data.osc the cloud. So, you know, unless CSD is holding an event or something like that. So you are correct. Now, as it happens unintentionally, the centrality of RSP to internal project operations is actually giving us the usage intensity. It doesn't give us the scale, obviously, because we don't have 10,000 users internally, but it does give us really very stressed people trying to get some work done, and they're really good about complaining about what they want that they don't have, or that they wish they had, or what breaks. So one of the motivation behind the Nublado V3, which was a significant amount of work with essentially no externally visible benefits, except those minor ones above, is the RSP on the summit is running in a very constrained system. There are very few nodes available at the summit because of the power budget, and we were getting session terminations in the RSP at the summit. So this was a great thing to run into, because obviously on Google we don't have limited resources, but it did actually show us the fragility in the system under certain circumstances, and we spent a whole bunch of time repairing it. So yes, so as it happens, and especially now, I can't remember how big the commissioning army is, but it's a lot of people, right? How many people are in the commissioning army? Like it's only, like they're over 100, right? Right. No, from the project, like the volunteers, the externals. Sorry, yes. Okay. Okay.
100. There's
Yeah.
like 100. What you're thinking of.
Or order of 100. Now, so this order of 100 volunteers are actually excellent proxies for external users. They're not project people, they don't use the system every day, and they're going to have tasks to do relating to commissioning. So I think they're also going to be a very useful user pool. Although they will be working on the embargo rack on the USDF RSP and not on data.osc the cloud, but it doesn't matter because it's the same system. So you are right, you're totally correct. Generic data preview interest is waning. This is why I would argue we need no more simulated data previews, because, okay, now we've had the DP 0.3, we had the moving objects, we are deriving increasingly low utility from them. Yes.
Yes, before we go to Dom, I want to add the CST has a couple of plans to sort of keep boosting up users as well. So the summer school was pretty effective. We can go bigger on that next year. And we have some plans. We're working on ways to do more focus groups. So having people sit down and really like watch them use the portal, get their feedback, have them work through exercises. And we plan to involve the users committee in those activities as well. So that should bring in some more feedback.
Great, thank you. I
Yeah.
loved both those answers.
Yeah, it's good. Dom.
Well, thank you, Frosty. It was, I think all this work on the RSP is really incredible.
Thank you.
Frankly, it's very nice.
And I would like to say that Dominic's group runs an RSP at their institution.
And so my question is, do you intend at some point to provide batch access and something like a Dask access or any other direct access to the packet files?
Yeah, excellent question. Okay, the answer is yes, but there are the different kinds of yes. So, so if you go to the kind of original requirements that then LSST had, the requirement was that besides the first party factory processing of the data release, we would make 10% of our computing resources available for user batch. Okay, that was the original promise to the community before anybody had thought about science platforms. When the science platform came along, there was an honest to God discussion to say, does this replace, suddenly we have all these nodes and the users using them. Does this like replace our commitment? Does this fulfill our commitment to provide our computer to the community, or do we still need user batch? And the answer is we still need user batch because there are operations that need to be done on a batch system. User batch will run on the real batch system in the USDF, and it will be available through application because it is a constrained resource. So it's going to be like a time allocation committee. I'm sure Melissa can tell you more thoughts where, people apply for essentially time on the cluster to do custom reductions and things like that. Though that batch will have to use the science pipeline batch infrastructure. And actually, we have a document that I'll put in the chat later discussing these options. The RSP will be just a gateway to that batch system. Like it will give you the ability to submit a job, but it will not itself execute those jobs. That will be a batch process. That would be the same batch processing system that does our data releases, using the same frameworks. And also because, if you apply for it and there's fewer people getting that time, more time can be spent advising them how to set up their jobs and that kind of thing. Now, Dask is not in the requirements, but a blind person can see that the Dask would be an incredibly useful service to our community, and we will provide Dask service. We had one go around at how to provide it. We were uncertain whether it was the right architecture. And so we haven't fully decided on how to provide a massively available Dask cluster to 10,000 people, but it will absolutely be available. Dask is a beautiful choice. It is very transparent to the user. They don't need to understand much about parallelization. It's very Pythonic, and we will have it. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I think we should move on to our next discussion topic. There's a question for you in the Slack. Yeah. Okay. Oh, let's thank Frosty for preparing the slide. All right, so I think the next most popular topic was the role of UC through commissioning. So we can talk about that for 15 to 20. And then let's talk about Alejandra's comment raised about what have your interactions with users been so far? Have there been any? Are they contacting you? That kind of thing. All right, so role of UC through commissioning. Right, this had to come up from some of Michael's comments in the Slack as well. Yeah, so what is the operations team's vision for engagement with the IDF RSP during these next 2 years? Oh, this like kind of fits in with what we were just talking about. So the role of the UC over the next couple of years. So sorry, I'm just reading what I myself wrote here. Right. New functionality will continue to be deployed at both the IDF and the USDF. Community science team is going to continue to upgrade and develop documentation and tutorials and have more additional engagement activities. We continue with our sort of biweekly assemblies and our drop-in stat club. It's very casual, but then we sort of start to put more emphasis on the summer school and reach a broader audience and try to do more pointed activities to get people using parts of the portal and to watch how they use them, so we can provide better feedback and rolling the users committee into those focus groups as well to have you participate and give you another chance to interact with users. Yeah, so that's kind of how I see users committee action sort of integrating what we're doing in the next couple of years and even ramping up and participating more in what we call like science validation of the Rubin Science platform. Would anyone like to comment on what's up here or just ask additional questions about the years to come? And if you're online, I will be able to see your raised hands, or you can just unmute and chime in. Bob.
I just want folks to know that internally and with some of our close collaborators at Slack within the in-kind program at Noir Lab, we are discussing the possibility of enabling in various ways that respect some of the construction project commissioning priorities that Frosty was talking about. Ways to bring precursor data sets to the community. And so all I'll say is we are talking about this. And I hope we will say something positive about it soonish.
Do you want user committee feedback on that now? What they might,
I think it would be useful. I think the users committee is going to be very interested if we're successful in getting something going. And I think that's the appropriate time for them to start engaging with us on it. I would rather they not get spun up if for some whatever reason we're not successful, but I'm hopeful that we will be.
I guess I'll just ask a sort of a general question of will the UC's role be kind of any different from what it is now, other than that we'll have commissioning data?
yeah, I don't see the UC's role as changing too much. I just want to continue to ramp you up and to make sure that you're learning what you need to learn about the RSP and give you more, right? So over the last couple of years, sometimes I give you little homeworks that you can do so that when you come to the meeting, we have stuff to talk about. But those homeworks will either get more challenging, or the users committee, you'll have used the RSP enough that you've come up with your own issues, or you found your own gaps in our materials and the services. So, but it's still the same role, just ramping up, I think. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yeah, and I think I anticipate that it'll be pretty natural when we're actually looking at real data. It tends to focus attention generally.
Yeah, Dom.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment that I think it's nice if we have some homework to do and to for the user committee to really have a look inside what is provided and to make his own opinion and own judgment of what is provided to the users. But I think what is missing, and this is related to your question, is the interaction between the users community and the users committee.
Mm-hmm.
This is totally missing at the moment. I think for what I am concerned, but
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, Igor.
Yeah, I was about to make a comment exactly on those lines. I think we would benefit in particular from feedback by power users. So there are probably two categories of users: those that come in the first time, or the first few times, and want to find an ecosystem that they can dive in easily. So the starting point, and then there is the power user, whoever wants to become a Mario, who will have a different set of problems that we, as a users committee, will hardly be able to even recognize as such, even if we work on the portal and the notebooks for a few days as part of the little homework, let's say, that we are assigned. So improving this type of communication and feedback will be really valuable, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Melissa?
Yeah.
I wonder, is it useful to think about somehow connecting the users committee specifically to delegates and reaching out individually? You know, I would imagine each users committee person could get a list of some people that you might be able to characterize as, you know, completely new to this type of technology, more senior and having used data platforms and things, and then maybe power users, and then allowing the users committee to contact them. It doesn't have to be high pressure. If someone doesn't want to respond, they don't have to, but it might be interesting to have some of those direct conversations rather than just like a general survey.
Yes, that might be a good way because we want to avoid over surveying.
Yeah.
But one-on-one conversations can be more enticing, more likely for people to participate. So we could easily set up what you suggested and sort of pull out groups of users, give a list of 10 emails to every users committee member, and you go and you just talk to like a random cross section of users and see what you find. That's one way to start.
We could make even Zoom connections available to people if they wanted to do that.
Yeah. We could also think about, so we have sort of our Stat Club Delegate Assembly regular stuff that we have not invited the UC to host one of those yet, but we could easily do that. And we could have no staff in the room and you could just talk with users about how it's going for them. So we could do that as well. Other comments? I saw a hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about what other members of the committee had experienced in these years, because at least for me, maybe it's because I'm also new in committee, so I don't know how they actually work. But for me, I received very valuable input, but not like as addressed to the committee, like something like, oh, you should comment about this. It's like corridor conversations or more in the context of the broker than of the users committee in general. For instance, a very interesting comment that I heard in this workshop is, for instance, thinking ahead, not only in commissioning. What is the vision of operations regarding Ruby in context with other archives? For instance, for us that check multi-wavelength data or everything that is available for a given object could be easy or not, depending on how expert are you coding, like to searching all that is available for a given object. Is that something that Ruby may want to make easier for the users, or it's up to us to search for those? Like, for instance, I don't know, Gaia, other surveys that are can be very valuable, putting in context with what Ruby will provide.
Okay, so the question here is about how users committee can support people who are using both Rubin data and other data archives simultaneously.
Exactly. Maybe it's beyond the scope of what we could think, or maybe it's something that we would expect when people are ready to use the real Rubin data. It's hard to manage now because of the simulations part, but something trying to think ahead of what the user may want. So.
Yeah, so I tend to see like Rubin Science Platform is primarily serving LSST data, but there are lots of groups, IDEX, the Link group, that are working on cross-match. Noir Lab, Community Science Data Center, they host many different types of data sets that they've pre-cross-matched together. And I still don't have a super clear idea of how users will be doing this cross-match, or exactly the full ecosystem of all the software that will be available for cross-match from all the IDACs and like everything else. I saw Frosty's hand pop up at the cross-match.
Yeah, although I suspect Gregory is gonna pop up even faster. So I just want to say that
On cross-match, yes, we do have something to say about that. If that's
go for it, and then I'll tell my bit.
okay. Well, so we obviously have recognized this as an issue for a long time. As Melissa said, and I think Frosty kind of implied, actually hosting other data sets is something that there's no defined scope or funding for Rubin, other than the data sets that are needed for Rubin's own internal purposes. So, we use the Gaia data, of course, for astrometric calibration and other purposes. But just to more generally, it's out of the defined baseline scope for the project to to host other projects' data, or to perform actual cross matches. And you know, I want to make a point about that, is that that's a cross matches are a scientific operation. They're not a data management operation. And they involve science decisions about what the purposes of the cross match are. And we've always agreed with the community that we weren't going to try to impose our will on that particular point. It's not quite the same thing as it is for Gaia, because there were, you know, good astrometric reasons for Gaia to do its initial set of cross matches against other well-known surveys that had been used as astrometric standards. So that's just a preface to this point about cross matching. Having said all of that, we do want to make our data very readily usable in these ways, and very readily usable with other data sets. So the first thing that we're doing about that is the Rubin Science Platform is based completely on IVOA standards. So you will always be able to query any other VO compatible data publisher from the Science Platform, from the portal, from the notebook using PyVO. That's always going to be available. Now we recognize that doesn't give you co-location of the Rubin data with other data sets, of course, which is what you would need to do all sky level cross-matching. If you want to do something in a you know, a modest query area like the Cosmos field or something like that, you can probably do it that way. But if you wanted to do an all sky cross-match, that's not going to work that way. So to support that, we are engaging with Link and with the NASA centers, with IPAC, with MAST in particular, and with NORLab on a proposal for a community standard spatially partitioned data format for large catalogs that is explicitly designed to facilitate cross matches, and is designed to allow those to be done very, very well in a parallel way on cloud resources. It's currently going by a maybe temporary name of HipsCat for the data format, and LSDB2 for the code. So Rubin is actively engaged in this work. In fact, I'm going straight from this meeting to a meeting of that collaboration in 15 minutes. We are hoping to provide the Rubin catalogs in that spatially partitioned form. We've always said we would do that, and certainly at least the object catalog. So that's part of that story. So I wasn't asked to present on this subject today, so I don't have any slides on it, but I'd be happy to present what is planned and what could be done but is not in our baseline to the user committee at a future date, maybe at the 2023B meeting. Frosty.
Yeah, I just want to add that, like, as a technical person who doesn't have to worry about all these things, I'm going to say I would love to see more data co-location. Like Gregory is correct that, you know, it's a question of scope and funding and director level type problems and even agency level type problems. But from a technical point of view, the more, like, you know, the more we build a data lake, the more data sets we bring together next to each other, the easier it is to do these like cross observatory investigations. So while it is correct that from the science platform you could do a query against master CDC, get a tap result back, do a query against QServe, get a tap result back, and then join them yourself, right? It would be even better if those data
Absolutely.
were located. And so I just want to say that, you know, we don't have any power in this, but we have been using any kind of soft power that we have to encourage other major facilities in the agencies to support more data collocation, which also means supporting more cloud computing. It's very frustrating because this is not a technical problem. Like, if we could collocate today, we could unleash a whole bunch of like cross-mission facilities today. We could bring a whole bunch of science platforms next to those data sets today. we could, from a technical point of view, this is all very possible, but there are, I repeat my corollary to Conway's law, which is architecture reflects the funding streams. So that is
Yeah,
a
so like,
real issue.
let me add to that also, one of the reasons that we are collaborating with the NASA archives on this is that they are responding to a mandate that they have themselves from their agency and from their user committees to make all of the large NASA generated data sets available in a single place in the cloud to facilitate these kinds of analyses. The actual implementation decisions for that are not complete, but there's active R&D going on, and it's on a pretty short fuse. So that's why I felt it was important for Ruben to be a player in those discussions, and we are actively working on this.
That makes sense. Thank you, Gregory. Michael?
That's great. I think cross matching is like PhotoZ. Like, yes, it's a scientific thing, but there are only 5 things that most people are going to want, and they're computationally expensive to do, and it's silly to have users do them. So these things sound good. To return to Alejandra's question about engagement with the users committee, I think there was a missed opportunity at this meeting and at other things, right? Like, I think obviously that I've had this thought 2 weeks ago, I would have made this suggestion. I'm just using this example. We weren't introduced at the plenary. This is the meeting of people most likely to be users.
Yeah.
We were introduced as the people on the committees, but not visible people on stage to go follow and talk to this person at the coffee. That's I think those are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if your goal is to get people to come talk to us. So, sorry, it's day 5, so I'm going to be a little direct. Do you want this committee to approve things and say things are fine and make occasional things? Or do you want this committee to challenge things that projects are doing? I presume it's the latter.
I want to say that I think there's a lot we could learn from the way that the NASA archives run their user panels. I mean, I don't work for URSA, although I work in the same building, but I know a bit about how this works, and their user panel does interact with actual users, and they do provide guidance and prioritization on a regular basis. And URSA feels a substantial responsibility to then respond to the things that the committee has said. Sometimes they say, of course, have to say, that'll be expensive and we don't have funding for that right now. But then, the corollary is that the user panel report is a useful tool with which to go back to the agency and say, hey, there's this thing that is really in high demand. How can we make this happen?
And so just to follow, so I think future opportunities are science collaboration meetings, potentially AAS, LSST at Europe, just things like that. We should just, and I do mean visible, stand up. So there's visual recognition. Oh, that guy with, the long hair or whatever. Like, just because if you don't know my name, you're not going to come find me or something, just to increase the visibility. Because I have conversations and no one knows that I'm on the committee. I bring it up, but that's not the role anyone knows me in.
Mm-hmm. Sure, Frosty.
Since we're in day 5 honesty mode, I just want to say, from my point of view, and you of course can define, your own role, though there is also a charge. I'm not interested in another review committee. So I take your point about not rubber stabbing thing and being a challenge to the project, but what would I actually like is some help. And so, for me, both the community science team and the user committee are have the kind of relationship that a product owner has with the team. It's their job to represent the outside to the team, but it's also their job to represent the team to the outside. So if I go and have to make a quota, or if I have to go and tell people, no, you can't do the thing that you want to do, I need a user committee behind me to say, look, yes, we consider the proposal and we all discussed it with the project team. And we agree that this is not a priority for the technical teams, or this is not a feature that the science platform should treat as a high priority. So I think, you know, it's great to like be the collector of all the, you know, the wishing well the community has and bring those to us. But we also need the reverse, which is we need an ability for you to represent as people who can see both sides of the fence, is to be able to represent us in the decisions that we're making for the good of the commons to the users. And so, because if I wanted a review panel, I have plenty of those every 3 months. So I think it's important to see this more of as a communication interface, so that, you know, you can help us a bit as well, because, you know, the 10,000 user thing is overwhelming, and we will have to say no to a lot of people for a lot of things. It's not possible to be the compute center for the world, especially not with, like, you know, 5 devs. Yeah, anyway.
So just falling under architecture reflex funding, do we get our own budget? I'm not asking Frosty to answer that question, but I feel like this committee is responsive to stuff. Melissa sends us a note and we go do a thing. And I hear, I think, a little the challenge from Bob and Frosty that let's stand up and be more independent and do stuff is a possible future. I think that would look a little different.
We certainly support your travel, and we're happy to talk about other needs you might have. My main point is I would like to see, and maybe I'm getting ahead of Melissa here, but I would like to see the committee proactively engage with the community, and I'm basically giving you permission to do that. And then, you know, to connect back to what Frosty said, this is really about a dialogue and communication and transparency. We can't do everything for everybody, but we at least want to hear what people are thinking and what we can do. And you are one place where you can help explain to the community, you know, what the issues are and what our limitations are, or, you know, I expect you'll also bring good ideas to us that we will be able to respond to.
Yes, I think my takeaway here is before the users committee meets again, 23B, before you write your 23B report, we need a couple of more ways for you to talk to users. So we got a couple of ideas out of this that I kind of want to discuss in the last few minutes, because it's going to affect like what I do, what tickets I write like immediately next week. I can split up all of our list of people who've ever sort of engaged in DP0. We have lists of these emails. I can invite them, divide them into groups and invite them to contact one of you personally. So they will get an email. Yes.
My sense is it might be more effective if the users committee gets a contact list and reaches out to those people rather than asking them to contact us.
Yes, we can do that. I could do it that way instead. You will each get a list of, I don't know, 50 people, and you can reach out to them in your own voice and ask for whatever feedback you're most interested in hearing. We'll see what happens. I'd also like to probably spend like one delegate assembly at least, or maybe 1 or 2 very user feedback centered virtual sessions that get very much like, very, very well advertised. That's not something we've tried so far. And so we'll make sure a couple of users committee members can be there, and you can talk with various users and just find out what they're doing. Igor?
Perhaps can those be attached to the users committee meeting, say the half an hour before we meet? So instead of organizing additional meetings, we already keep one that for which we have, let's say, 1 hour budgeted. We just make it 1.5 hours and make sure we personally invite the users to join and have that as an opportunity to further give feedback on top of the various other opportunities, surveys, meeting in person, so on and so forth. And just to also respond to what Frosty was mentioning earlier, perhaps we can do, I think actually Matt as chair did that pretty well already, but maybe find even better way to communicate to people what the needs of the project, the decisions, the challenges have, so that we work even more kind of both ways. think there were instances in which I think we helped. For example, even providing opinion regarding the wait time that user might have if data go in cold storage or not. We can just maybe do that in an even more transparent and loud way, perhaps.
Mhm. So yeah, in terms of inviting users to come, we can do it that way. We could make it right before the 23B meeting and not in the weeks leading up, so that it all happens at one time and everyone knows what that time is. I was envisioning a couple of like open drop-in sessions in the weeks leading up. We could try both though. Yeah. Bob?
To take Michael's other suggestion, I'd be happy to put a slide for LSST5 at Europe in my talk with pictures of all of you on it. So if you are so inclined, send Melissa a picture that we can build a slide on. And if any one of you are going to be at LSST5, we can certainly introduce you to do that. And we can be sure to do that as we go forward at these meetings and other places too. Anyone going to be at LSST5 from the committee?
Oh, okay, that kind of brings us to the end. I feel like I might have made a single slide for the users committee with photos at some point. So I'll see if I can
We'll
find it.
look for that. And if people want to send a picture because they think they have a one that they want us to show, we'll be happy to include that too.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here today and contributing to the discussion. You'll be hearing from me about your 23B meeting. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.